All righty. Thank you once again. My name is Audrey Brown. I'm the assistant to the director for Zan Wesley Community Homes. I would like to introduce to you this morning during the resume clinic, Jasmine Anderson. She is the operations manager for Zen Wesley Homes Community Outreach Center. I would also like to introduce you to Miss Ruth Burton. She is the lead facilitator for Oasis. So this is the resume clinic. So we're going to allow them to share with us the information that's needed to help all of us know how to tweak our resumes. Help us to move forward. Thank you so much, ladies.
Thank you, thank you. I'm going to go ahead and pull the presentation up here, Miss Byrne. And then, like I said, just let me know when I need to go to the next page.
Well, good morning. We are happy to have you here with us this morning as we go into our resume writing workshop. We're going to be with you for a little while this morning. So what we want you to do is just to relax and just to get yourself in a frame of mind. We're going to be learning some things new. We've looked at your resumes and we see that you have a great start on your resumes. But what we want to do is to give you some thoughts as to how you can improve your resumes, how you can literally set yourself apart from the other candidates. We write resumes so that we might be able to get an interview. So our resume is our spokesperson. Our resume is our salesperson. We use our resumes to help us sell ourselves. And just like any ad that you might see, your resume has to catch someone's attention. It has to be eye-catching. So there are some things that we can do to make our resume more eye-catching, to catch more attention. One of the things that people do not know is that when a hiring manager looks at your resume, they probably spend only six seconds. Actually, 6 seconds. In a study by Ladders, the major national recruiting firm, they say that each resume gets a 6-second look. And if there's not something there, your resume goes probably in the file where you don't want it to go. Unless something catches their attention, then you're just out of the game. So in 6 seconds, you have to catch someone's attention. Now, if you do, they'll spend another maybe 20 seconds on your resume. So the resume is very, very important. Now, Miss Anderson, did you want to come right in here?
Yes, and do you want me to go to the next page?
No, I just thought well, yes, you can go on to the next page. That'll be fine.
All right. And then the only thing I think I would like to add to that, because I was actually looking for a pen so I can make some notes of different things I wanted to say, because I don't want to say them and then you make mention of them in the PowerPoint. But then also a lot of systems are moving to automated systems as well. So you have to be very strategic in the keywords that you use, because it won't even pull your application out. Even if you're a viable candidate, they won't even pull your application out to even give it that 6-second glance if you don't have the correct keywords in there. I know FedEx is one of those companies. I know St. Jude is one of those companies. So a lot of those larger firms, even with the staffing agency, because a lot of people may start at a staffing agency like Robert Half and then go on to, to go inside an actual firm. If you don't have those correct keywords embedded in the inside your resume, they will not pull it at all, and so it'll never see the light of day. So it's very important that sometimes you have to remember that you're going to tailor it to fit the needs of that particular job. So you may have to go in there and tweak your title a little bit, or tweak some of the different skills in there a little bit. If the job says that they're looking for specialists, but your stuff says analyst, then you may want to change analyst to specialist, so that way it can get pulled. So that's kind of all I have to add on that piece there.
All right. And so what we're going to cover this morning, we're going to cover a few things. First of all, we're going to learn how to market your skills. Then we're also going to cover how to format your resume. We're going to be talking about what employers are looking for on a resume. And then we're going to go through just a few extra things and then have some questions from each of you. Now, in terms of how to market your skills. Jasmine, if we could go to the next slide. There are a couple of things that I want you to really keep in mind. So 4 major tips that I want you to keep in mind in terms of marketing your skills. I want to come back and amplify what Jasmine said. If you are writing a resume, you really are going to have to put some effort into it. And this writing a resume is part of the hard work of getting a new job. And we suggest that you have a resume for each job application, because as Jasmine said, you have to be very specific, you have to tailor it, and you can't just make it like a soup. You can't throw everything in there, because if you throw everything in there, then you're going to get set aside. You have to be very specific in terms of the job that you are looking for. So the first thing you need to do on your resume is to create a captivating job target. Now, we could call that a summary of yourself. We could call that a lot of different things, but you need something that pulls the hiring manager's eye to your resume. We suggest that you move away from the job objective, something that says, you know, I want a job in this field where I can contribute. That puts the focus on you. We want you to put the focus not on you, but on the employer. So to get that focus on you, we need to start with a captivating job target, captivating job summary, something that really will catch their eye. Something like, how about this one? This is one that I came across that I really liked. It says, an experienced executive with over 18 years of deep industry experience and knowledge in nonprofit and local government service delivery. So in one line, you've given a great description of yourself. You can go further if you might like, but in that one line, an experienced executive with over 18 years of deep industry experience and knowledge in nonprofit and local government service delivery. So that's what you want to do. You want to start off with something that will bring the eye to that resume. Also, you want to focus on the employer's needs, not yours. An employer is looking for an employee who can provide certain skills for them when you are dealing with the resume. Every employer is looking for 3 things. They're looking for someone that can help them make profit, someone who can help them increase their productivity, and someone who understands safety. So it doesn't matter what kind of industry you're in, an employer will always have 3 needs. Someone who can help them make a profit, someone who can help them with increase their productivity, and someone who understands safety. So you have to focus on these employer needs. How can you help the employer come up, or how can you help the employer improve in these 3 areas? So your resume should focus around these 3 areas: profit, productivity, and safety. Now, something else that you can add in your resume are testimonials. You can add how someone else has agreed that you are an excellent employee. You can add how a manager has recommended you for an award. You can add awards that you have received. So you can add testimonials inside your resume that will state that someone else agrees with you that you have been an excellent employee, that you have done great things at the company where you work. So that's something you always want to think about. How can you get somebody else to testify on your behalf that your background will be beneficial for this organization? Now, the last thing on how you can market yourself is that you might include your blog or anything that you've done for social networking purposes. Social networking is very, very, today is captivating a lot of people. And if we have a social networking presence, that really helps us. So you might want to include some information from LinkedIn, or that you're on LinkedIn. So if you have a social networking presence add that to your resume to help market yourself. So again, 4 things that you want to do. You want to start with that captivating job target to let people know in one line why you should be added to their roster of employees. You want to focus on the employer needs, and you want to remember those 3 things, that every employer is looking for someone who can help them increase their profit, increase their productivity, and who will be safe in their environment. You also want to try and get someone else to help you testify that you're going to be a great employee. Ms. Anderson, may we have that next slide?
Yes, and then also, I think this might be a good place to add about the QR codes that we were discussing. And I'm going to see if I can potentially bring that up so that way I can show them here quickly. Let's see. And so I'm not sure if anyone's familiar with the QR codes. They're like those little boxes sometimes that you see at the grocery store or out, and they were like, if you take a picture of this, it'll bring up the information about it. So I know one of the things she was saying about how you want to make sure you market yourself and set yourself apart from the group and make sure that your voice is heard before even walking into the room. And so a lot of people have started adding these codes. So like she was like that social media presence. So a lot of people have started adding these codes to their resumes because once they take a picture of it, it'll take them directly to either a website that they created or to their LinkedIn page, or even it could be a professional Facebook page if you want to make one of those. The easiest thing to do would be to go directly to that LinkedIn page. One, because it's a free platform, it's a professional platform, and it's also a place where people can see those testimonials because you have people that make reviews about you, you have people that verify that you worked at the different companies that you said you have. So it's a great way for a company to validate that you are the type of employee that they're looking for. Okay, so let me see if they'll let me share this on my screen here. Hold on.
Also, by sharing these things on your resume, by sharing your social media presence, that lets the employer know that you have technical skills, that you are up to date on your skills, that you're not someplace stuck in the 80s, that you are using the 2020 technology that's available to us.
All right. So, and the QR code, for those that may or may not know, the QR code is that little thing off to the right that's in like this soft gray, off to the right at the top. That's what the code looks like. That code is generated specifically to a website or to a specific link. So one code cannot take you to anywhere. It has to be generated directly to yours. Now, disclaimer, my brother just showed me how to do this morning. So, but he made it seem like it was fairly easy. But right here it says enter your website, text or drop a file. I'm just going to put the website for Zan Wesley Homes because I don't know my LinkedIn off the top of my head. And I don't know if it requires the HTTP, so we're going to find out together here in just a moment. The easiest thing to do would probably be just to copy and paste a link in there, but you just type it in, and I'll put this website in. It may be easier for my phone. Hold on, let me see if I can move this.
Those codes are used a lot for merchandise, like promoting new merchandise.
Mm-hmm. Yep, people use it for that as well.
Yeah.
And it may be that I have to download the app. So I may have to, because for my phone, it just lets you create it.
Okay.
So it may be a little different on the computer. And I don't want to take up too much of our time here today. Oh, so that says with logo. I don't need it with the logo. So yeah, I don't want to take up too much of our time, but I'll drop this website from your phone. It'll just let you go ahead and create it. You may have to actually download some type of software, but it is free to make it. And then all you do is once it's made, you just copy and paste it onto your resume. Really simple. And if anyone needs any help with that after the class or even on another day, just email me and I'll be more than glad to set aside some time and then we can work on it together. Because like I said, I don't want to take up too much of our time here today, but honestly, it was just as easy as you type the website in. So that would be your LinkedIn page or whatever that is that you wanted to bounce to. And then there's a button at the bottom that says like create your code. Once you click that, then that's it. It's pretty much done. Then you just copy and paste it to wherever you want it to go.
And again,
Right,
the major benefit of this is that it shows the employer immediately that you have computer technical skills, that your resume is for an employee who is using the current technology. So that's very much a plus for you in terms of verifying a skill set that you want your employer to know that you have. So let's go to our next slide where we talk about, we want to learn now how to format your resume. We want to learn how to format your resume. There are some basic things that we need to do our resume so that it's one of those that are considered. The first thing that we need to do in general is to keep our resume to one page. There are some industries where the more the better. I mean, in education, they like you to list some of everything that you've ever done, including everything that you've ever written. So of course you can't get that on one page. But in general, for most positions, the hiring manager is looking for something short and sweet. So we like to recommend that you keep your resume to one page. We like to recommend that you are concise in whatever that you are putting on your resume. And by concise, it's best if you can use bullets instead of sentences or paragraphs. That helps us keep the resume short, and it also allows the eye to be able to see it well. We want you to keep your font size to size 10, 11, or 12. We want you to keep your font size to 10 or 11, 12, and have your margins no less than a ½ inch all around, top and bottom. If you can get everything in and have your margins at 1 inch, 1 inch is actually better, because we'll talk about having white space. You need to have some white space on that resume so that it doesn't look like it's all jumbled together, so it doesn't look like it's all mashed together. So you need some white space. So what we want to do is be able to have a inch top, bottom, and on each side if possible. One of the things that it's good to try and stay away from in your resume is the use of the word I. We want to be able to phrase things to where we can use I as sparingly as possible. Now, if anybody wants to make a comment while we are going, I don't have any problem with anybody raising their hand and letting me know that they want to make a comment or if they have a question. So we can certainly be interactive during this resume, and you don't have to listen to just me. I have learned that everyone always has something that they can add to a presentation, something that they have learned that will probably help everyone else who is in the session as well. So feel free to interact. Now, we want to, when we're dealing with our resume, one of the things that Jasmine said is that most resumes now go through an ATS system, a computer automated software package, and they'll be checking for things such as grammar. And so if you want to use past tense in describing past position and use present tense in describing your current positions, and please don't mix them up. And sometimes we really have to read and reread, edit our resume to make sure that we have little things like grammar correct. So you want to be sure that your grammar is correct, that your spelling is correct. You want to make sure that you're consistent in the use of punctuation. You can look at this slide right here. If I have a period after the first bullet and not a period after the second bullet, then a period on the fourth bullet, I'm just all over the place. We need to be consistent in our use of punctuation. So if you're using periods, use them throughout. If you're not using periods, leave them off everywhere. We can also, in terms of using our technology, use our computer to bold words, use italics, use underline formatting. So this will help to actually break up the document and make the document easier to read. You can use bolding or italics to bring the eye to specific parts of the resume. All right, Jasmine, let's move on to our next page. Now, in the resume, we'll of course start off with our header. And in the header, you want to have your name in bold. You may want to have your name, the font size a little larger than the other font size so that it can be easily highlighted and easily read. But in the header, you also want to include your mailing address, your phone number, and a current email address. When we're dealing with email addresses, we want to make sure that our email address is professional. You would not want to send in an email address that said catdaddy1@gmail.com. That would not be a professional email address. Now, Miss Audrey, I see you smiling, but if there are people who have sent in resumes with an email address catdaddy1@gmail.com. Now that says something about you, doesn't it? Go ahead, Miss Audrey. What does that say about you?
Too much.
Gives you there you
Too
go.
much information. We don't need that.
We don't need that. So we need to always remember that your resume represents you. So you may have to have a different resume, a different email address for your business needs versus your personal needs. Ms. Jasmine, would you agree with me that resumes or email addresses that might say catdaddy1@gmail.2 or partygirl123@yahoo are not a reasonable email address?
I wholeheartedly agree. Because like you say, you see it every day. You see it very often. Yeah, you see it very often. We see a lot of them with the Amazon employees that come through. They have some interesting email addresses.
And that really says something about their level of professionalism and how they might represent your organization, right?
Agreed.
So we have to really be careful about our email address. Now, when we're dealing with our formatting, we start with the header. And the first thing you want to deal with after you've done that job targeting summary is that we have to answer the question, are we going to use our experience first or are we going to use our education first? If you've worked for a while and you've gone through several positions and you have experience that you can place on your resume, well, then your experience will always follow. It will always be next. Now, if you are just coming out of high school, if you have not worked, don't have any work experience, well, then you want to highlight your education first. So it depends. Do you have experience? Do you have work experience? Do you have some jobs, some positions that you can put down? If yes, that education experience goes right to the top, and then education will come in later. But if no work experience, if no jobs, then we want to highlight where you've been to school first and how well you have done in school. Activities and memberships that are relevant to the job position are something that you can also put on your resume. Again, these are things that will help verify your work experience. These will help verify your skills, but don't just put down that you were in the Boy Scouts in the 5th grade. You need to put down something that is relevant to the job that you are currently seeking. Skills. This is one thing that we want to make sure comes later in the resume. If you want to list your skill set, if you want to list specific skills. One of the things that recruiters or hiring managers will tell you is that you really don't want to put your skills at the top of the page because they want to assess your skills. And that really keeps them from looking at your job experience and what you've accomplished in your jobs. So you want to make the skill set, the skills list secondary, or you want to put it later in the resume. Again, education will typically go at the bottom unless you have not had any previous work experience. So this is typically the order that most hiring managers are looking to get your resume completed in. All right, Miss Anderson, I think we can go to the next slide.
All right. And just something quick to add there. Sometimes, especially if you don't have a lot of experience or maybe activities and memberships, because again, like Ms. Ruth was saying, you want to keep it to one page, but sometimes depending on the position you're applying for, it may be good to add honors and recognition, especially let's say if you were a teacher and you were awarded, you know, special type of accolades inside your teaching career, and you may not have a lot of leadership experience just yet, but you're applying for a leadership experience. It may be good to start to mention that, you know, you've gotten these different honors and recognitions for the positions that you have played, to show them that you do set yourself apart amongst the rest of the other applicants. And then also with education, I know I noticed this a lot in that if you do have college experience, it's based at your personal discretion. So I've heard a couple of different things, but a lot of the time, especially if you have that collegiate experience, it's not necessary always to mention high school, because that's kind of a given. So especially if you're running low on space, there may be something that you may want to omit. As well as if you did not complete college, I wouldn't mention some college personally. From what I've read and from just from personal experience, I would mention how many hours you obtained and what program you worked in. So let's say instead of just saying, you know, you went to the University of Arkansas and, you know, did some college, I would say, you know, University of Arkansas obtained 40 hours towards teacher's license or towards political science. That sounds, it sounds a little bit more professional, and it doesn't necessarily sound as though you just quit. It shows that there's the opportunity of there of you potentially even going back.
And while we're talking about education, let me remember to mention that some of you have different levels of degrees. There may be high school, there may be college, there may be post college education. So one of the things that you really have to consider, depending on the amount of education you have, is what job are you looking for? So if you are looking for a job, let's say as a sales clerk, but you happen to have a doctorate degree, you really have to evaluate if you want to put that doctorate degree down there, because a lot of hiring managers could hold that against you. I have a doctorate degree, so I have a terminal degree, so the hiring manager is going to ask, does that mean they're going to be looking for more money? Does that mean that even if I give them this job, are they going, and we train them, is this person going to be happy to stay with us over a long period, or are they going to leave us as quickly as a better job comes along? So depending upon the amount of education you have, sometimes you don't want to put it all on your resume, depending upon the job that you're looking for. So if they ask in terms of requirements, if they only ask for high school or some college or a college degree, you really want to think about, do you want to put that extra education down there? Because it's not always a plus. So
that's a great point on that. And also, and I have a question for you to kind of get your thoughts on this. Now with education, you want to make sure, like you said, if you're going to make mention of all of the different degrees that you have, you want to start with the highest one, I guess. So if you have your master's, you'll want to start with the master's, then you want to go to the bachelor's, and then if you're going to make mention of the high school, then you'll go high school. That's the order that you want to take, because again, 6 seconds is all you have to make an impression. So when they go to that education piece, the first thing they're going to look at is that first line. And more than likely, they're not going to go down past there. So you don't want to bury the good stuff. So that brings my question, Ms. Ruth. So with experience, I've heard two different ways. A lot of the times it's easiest to go in chronological order, but I've also heard, again, like you said, you only have 6 seconds and they're not going to read everything. Do you think that it's best to go with the most, to list the experience that speaks more specifically to that job, even if it means going out of order?
I think you need to only list the experience for that job. Okay. The employer, the hiring manager is looking for what you've done that's relevant to that particular position. So if you've worked for 20 years, one of the things you want to, and we'll deal with that somewhere in here, is that you don't want to necessarily put down 20 years worth of experience, because probably all 20 years of experience have not been relevant to the particular job. So you only want to put the experience that deals with your particular job. And hiring managers typically have said that they want you to begin with the last position first. With the last position first. So, does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. I guess the only other, that kind of brings up another question. What if that creates gaps? Because I know employers don't necessarily like to see gaps. So what if, let's say, and this is, I'll use myself for example. So I worked a lot inside the nonprofit sector and in local government, and then I started teaching, and then the school closed, so that laid me off for a bit. And so I worked as a recruiter until I was able to find another job. Well, the recruiting position was just something to make sure that I had money to pay my bills, but it doesn't necessarily fit inside the rest of my career catalog. So is it best to mention that so that way it doesn't show a gap in my resume? Or is it best to omit it, and then if the question arises, then I bring it up?
I think it's good to actually put it in your resume, but not highlight it the way you have done your others. You don't want to go into a level of detail for that particular position, because you are correct. Many employers will actually believe, Lily, that if you have a gap of more than 3 months, then they think, what has this person been doing? Has the person perhaps been incarcerated? Was the person ill? What was going on with that particular, at that point in time? So yes, you can list the company and perhaps the time period, but you don't have to really go into details on the activities there, because they're not relevant to that particular position.
Okay, great. That was great. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Now,
all right.
In terms of resume content, I need everybody to actually do a little work here, because we want to get a list of action verbs, and you can Google this. You can go to any number of sites and get a list of action verbs. These are verbs that talk to what you actually did in your particular job. A lot of people get into the habit of putting in, I was responsible for XYZ. Well, responsible for is not a verb. It does not tell what you have done. You want to use action verbs. You want to use verbs that say, I succeeded, I completed. So you want to get yourself a list of these verbs that will be relevant to the job that you were doing. And you want to list that say action, not I was responsible for, or I did. You want to say, I completed a job function. I was successful in a job function. So it's a very big difference in the verbs that you can choose. So get a list and get the one that is most relevant to your particular job. Now, you also want to customize your resume. And I say this over and over again. You cannot use the same resume for 5 different positions. You're going to have to tailor each resume for each different job because, again, you're trying to get the employer's attention. And so every resume should be tailored to the particular job that you are seeking. And with a computer now, it should be not difficult to sit down and cut and paste and change them, but you will get much more views. You will get much more eye contact. You will get much more hits if you will tailor each resume to the particular job. Now, right here it says include multiple titles and responsibilities if you had multiple roles in an organization. So if you've worked at, let's say, DISD over a period of 10 years, you probably have had multiple positions. So you want to include different titles, different time periods, and say specifically for each role how you were able to help DISD, again, improve its productivity, improve its profitability, or improve its safety. So use multiple titles and responsibilities. Lily, this is one that I want us to really focus on, this next bullet. This next bullet, some people don't really understand how important this is. And they don't understand that in Texas, you can literally lose your job. So Miss Audrey, do I see Lily and Felicia and one other person in our session today?
Yes.
Okay. So this bullet says, do not lie, do not exaggerate, or include anything on your resume you can't defend in an interview. The purpose of a great resume is to get an interview. But if you put something down in your resume and you get asked about it specifically, and you have to, you have to be able to defend anything you put on there. And don't put anything on there that might allow the hiring manager to catch you in a lie, because if they catch you in a lie, that's it. The interview is over. More than likely, you're not going to get a chance to move forward in this interviewing process, because who wants to hire a dishonest person? So,
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am, Miss Lily.
In the previous job that I was at, I was accounts receivable specialist, but I did a number of jobs. And in my resume, I didn't want to make it too wordy, but at the same time, I didn't want to miss everything that I did, because I also did payroll. I also did bank reconciliations. I also helped with doing the calendar for our director, our CFO. And so I did a lot of things. And so I really didn't know how to target all that information, all that experience in those 11 years and not make my resume so crowded.
Okay, so you worked for one employer for 11 years?
I did, yes.
Okay, well,
I worked at a school, nonprofit.
Okay, all right. Well, then you definitely want to include a different job title, perhaps for the different roles that you had at the company, or a different line.
I tried to do that, and so one of the recruiters that when I first lost my job in April, I tried to do that, and I tried to include the number of positions that I held over the 11 years, and he told me not to do that because I needed to focus on what the position I left with within the last 5 years of being there.
Okay, so what he was saying then is that he wanted you to be more concise. He wanted you to pull from, and sometimes maybe what you might need to do is to go to a different format altogether, is to go to what we call a functional format and not a chronological format. And then that way you can focus specifically on the functions that you have done that are relevant to the new job. And then that way it goes, you don't have to worry about the time periods. You can simply focus on, I did these 3 functions, and these 3 functions are the experience that I can show you that I know that will help me in this current role. So you may have to go away from the chronological resume to the functional resume.
Okay.
Now, whether you're using a chronological format or a functional format, remember, don't lie, exaggerate, or include something you can't defend. And you want to avoid jargon and acronyms without first spelling them out. So if I were to ask Felicia, if I were to ask you CDS, what's the first thing you think of when I say CDS? Where's Felicia?
He's muted.
Miss Felicia?
She's here, but she's muted. She may not know how to unmute.
Okay. Well, Jasmine, we'll ask you, what's the first thing you think of when I say CDS?
Control something.
Okay. Well, see, CDS has been in the news, the Center for Disease in Atlanta.
That makes perfect sense.
Okay, so everybody doesn't know all of these acronyms. Everybody doesn't know, the particular jargon that you might use in a particular industry. So that's why you don't want to put it down on your resume until you have spelled it out, because sometimes people just aren't thinking. It could be very relevant, but everybody just doesn't remember all these specific jargon that's used in a specific industry. They may not even know the jargon that's used in a specific industry. So spell it out first, and then you can come back and use that if you want to use it. Now, you definitely do not want to put any personal data on your resume, such as your birth date, marital status. The photograph goes 50-50. Some people like a photograph. Some people think a photograph really helps them, really a lot of benefit. Some people think that a photograph might prejudice people one way or the other. They might think that you're too old. They might think that perhaps you don't look like the salesperson they're looking for. So photographs can go one way or the other. I think it's a bit of a risk to put a photograph on there because you just don't know what the other person is looking for. And again, this might prejudice their thinking against you enough to keep you from getting that interview. And if you can get the interview, then you can always talk to someone and help them understand your great benefit to the organization. So I don't think you want a photograph to prejudice their thinking, but different people think different ways, and that might be something that you might want to include. If you're drop dead gorgeous, you might say, oh, this is a benefit to me. But some people might say, oh, this person is too gorgeous. This person is going to distract away from my product. So even being drop dead gorgeous may not be a benefit for you. All right. So that's what we want to look at in terms of our resume content. And let's do one more slide, and then we might take a little break, Miss Jasmine. Let's do one more slide.
Okay.
All right. I want to cover what employers are looking for in a resume. And these are some things that we have talked about, but I just want to put them all together. First one is keep it simple. Your resume, you need to keep it simple. Clear section headings, something that's simple. Again, you want that experience, your activities, your honors, your education. Make it very clear, make it very simple. Use bold type, capital letters, maybe even a different color to highlight these section headings. You want to try and keep your resume concise so that you can have plenty of white space so that it doesn't look all jumbled, all crowded together. And you want to skip the fancy graphics. This allows you to be more ATS friendly. That ATS, again, is that automated software package that Ms. Jasmine spoke of earlier in the presentation. Most organizations are now using computers because you're on these very, very large websites such as Monster, Job Indeed, and you'll get perhaps hundreds or thousands of people sending in a resume for a particular job. So they're using computers or this software to actually weed out or to actually remove people from consideration. So you want to skip those fancy graphics because that makes it more difficult for the software package, Again, you want to use a summary statement instead of an objective. That objective is talking about what you want and what your needs are, whereas the summary statement of your skills and abilities focuses on how you can help the employer. Now this says, next one says spotlight key skills. These are key skills relevant, and that RE is relevant to your to the position that you want. So you want to spotlight, highlight those key skills. And that's what we were talking about earlier, Miss Anderson. We want to focus on those job positions that we have held that verify your readiness, your job readiness to go to that next position. You may have had more, you may have had 3 jobs, you may have had 5 jobs, you may have had 7 jobs, but if only 3 of them really represent the relevant job experience for the next one, those are the ones that you want to highlight. Those are the ones that you want to go into greater detail on. So, and you want to put your latest experience first. Always put your last job first in a chronological resume. So, any questions on this page? All right, let's go to our next page. All right, I've got break it down here. And what I mean by breaking down, I just simply mean that I need you to, once you put in where you've worked, for whom you worked for, put in a job title. Make it easy for the hiring manager, or make it easy for whoever is reviewing your resume to be able to look at it and see all the relevant information for those positions that are relevant to the job you are seeking. And we want you to consider adding volunteer experience. You know, if you have not worked for a long time, or if your experience perhaps isn't as relevant as you would like to the next position, maybe you've had some volunteer experience that is on par with the new job that you are seeking. Perhaps you volunteered for some organizations and you've been a treasurer at an organization, you've handled funds, you've had to do bank deposits, you've had to reconcile, and these happen to be the job duties that are associated with the new position. So the same things that you've done in a volunteer role very well could catch the eye of a hiring manager because you have a good bit of experience in that. Now, you also want to, when you are dealing with your experience, try and quantify your bullets. You want to be as specific as possible. You want to set yourself apart. So when you can, in your resume, talk about how much, how many, how often. Let's say you were a sales clerk. It would be great if you were to say, sales clerk, I was successful at reaching my sales goal 3 months in a row. So that lets them know quantitatively, that gives them some real numbers that they can deal with. I was successful at reaching my target 3 months in a row. You could say that I completed all tasks for my employer every month. So you're using action words, but you're also quantifying what you have done. You might say that I reached the target of $200,000. I reached the target goal of $200,000. So you're quantifying what you've actually done. So it's not like you're just making a statement. You're putting some numbers with it, and when you can quantify it, that makes it much more valuable to a hiring manager. Ms. Anderson, I see you want to say something here. Go right ahead and jump in.
I actually did. I didn't know it was in my eyes though, but I just really had one piece to add is that and this is something that I've done myself in the past in my job search, is that sometimes I'm like, what should I put inside those bullets? You may have a general job description, but at the same time, you don't have necessarily an eye inside the company. So what I would like to do sometimes is actually go to the LinkedIn pages of some of the employees that work there at the job, especially if they have other people that work inside the role that I'm applying for, and just kind of get an idea of what are some of the bullet points that they have. What are they currently doing inside of their position? One is a great way for me to see if I'm actually qualified, as well as it's a great place to draw ideas from on what I should include on my resume for this specific job. You may notice it, like, oh, they analyze data. Well, I want to make sure, well, if that's something that you've done at the previous job, if you're trying to figure out what points are more important than the others, then that's a great way to go and figure out which ones you should pull out, what you should highlight. And like I said, I look at multiple ones, so that way I can kind of get a general idea, and get a real good synopsis of what their role embodies. And so I can know exactly kind of what to put on mine, because as she was saying, it's important that you have to tailor it specific to not just the position, but to the company as well. I know me and Ms. Ruth spoke the other day, and I was saying that sometimes putting high school is at your own personal discretion. Well, you may see what school that they graduated from. If you all graduated from the same high school, it may be beneficial to list that, because that could be a great talking point. Or if they're, an alma mater of that school and they really love their high school, that may be the one thing that sets you apart from everyone else, because they know what type of work ethic went inside that degree program at that particular school, and what type of ethics or morals you may have or that you may embody just because of that school name. So looking at some similarities that you all may have is also great, and you may want to make mention of that, and you can learn those types of things from going to their LinkedIn page, or even just Googling the name. If you're able to know who the hiring director is, or someone that works for the company, just Googling them and seeing if there's been any newspaper ads about them, or what's on their website, and just try to see if there's different ways that you can include that inside the resume. And I know we're not speaking about cover letters, but you can also include information like that inside the cover letter as well.
So what Ms. Anderson is saying, and we've said this point several times, if you want to make your resume better, if you want to make it more concise, if you want to give it more sizzle, do some research. If you are looking for, let's say, a sales clerk position, well then find perhaps job descriptions for several sales clerk positions and read those job descriptions. See what they're looking for in those job descriptions. See how you can then tailor your resume to use those same type of words. Again, this will help you with that ATS, or the applicant tracking system. This will help you with the computer when the computer is looking for certain words that need to be, as Ms. Anderson said, embedded in your resume. You can pull out several different jobs that you're looking for, get familiar with the wording that they are using, get familiar with those phrases that they're using, do some research, and make your resume, make what you've done match those job descriptions, so that your resume will rise to the top. You want to really be able to set yourself apart. Okay? Now, Miss Brown, do you think it might be a good time just to have a humanities break, so people might be able to get a little drink, and we can come back in, let's say, 10 minutes, and then I want to talk to you about some things you might want to do if you've been furloughed or if you've been laid off. But let's just take a 10-minute break, and then we'll come back and we will finish up with furloughs and layoffs and any additional questions that you might have.
The time is 12:34. We'll see you all back 12:44.
Great, thank you.
Thank
I'm
you.
gonna leave this open. I'm just gonna turn my screen
Okay.
off, but I'm gonna leave this open.
All right, thank you. Thank you, everybody. I want to say thank you from Zan Wesley Holmes for joining. Mr. and Mrs. Tebow, were you still there?
Yes.
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much. I can. Thank
Okay.
you. Miss, is that Felicia? I want to make sure I'm saying it right. Thank y'all so much for joining.
Thank you so much for offering the program.
Yes, ma'am. So how much are you familiar with Zan Wesley Holmes?
Well, I was actually referred by Felicia, and so she was telling me about
Great.
it. And I've never joined a resume writing class, and so I thought this would be beneficial.
Wonderful. Please stay tuned in. We have a lot of great things going on.
I was looking at that. I was on your website and I saw that you guys do a lot of events, which is really good.
Stay tuned for the two events I shared with you earlier. I will go back over those before we finish.
Will you send out emails on those?
Yes. So did you register for this class?
I did, yeah.
Okay. So now that we have your email, we'll make sure to continue to send things out to you.
I have a question while we're on break, if I may.
Sure.
While this pandemic is going on, I have really been trying to focus on teaching my son and getting him ready for the next year and looking for remote or virtual work versus going back into an office. And so I'm kind of questioning how should I do a separate resume for that? Should I put on there that it is for remote or virtual business, or should I leave the resume as is?
That question would be a great question for Miss Ruth and Miss Jasmine.
Okay.
Because I would say leave it as is, because I think a lot of jobs are going to go to remote either way.
Okay.
So, but when they come back on, I think that would be a great question so that you can get their ideas on that.
Okay, that'd be good. Okay, let me go check on my babies. I'll be right back.
Okay.
Do what you gonna get and come on out. Go back in. Take the finger, take that off. Take that off and fill that up right.
Okay, we have a few more minutes. We will continue. Miss Ruth, help me to remember to ask Jasmine, could we have paused the recording during the break?
If we did pause or if we did not?
It says recording, I don't think we did.
I don't think,
need to,
yeah, I
I
don't
don't
think
think
we
so.
did.
Okay, I'm gonna have to stay on top of that. Next time we can pause it, but it's all good.
Okay.
And we do have a question. We have one from Miss Lily, and then there's one from Felicia when we start back up, Miss Ruth. Miss Ruth, can you see the question in the chat?
Yes, relevant to job experience.
Yes, ma'am. Well, we'll tackle Miss Lily's question and then hit the chat.
Okay, I'm sorry. Do you want me to go ahead and ask the question?
We had a question from Miss Lily. Yes, let's do your question first, and then we'll hit the question in the chat.
My question was, due to the pandemic, I'm currently teaching my son and preparing him for school next year. And so I'm only looking for virtual and remote work right now. And so my question is, should I leave my resume as is, or should I name it something else or indicate that I'm only looking for remote and virtual work?
So is the fact that you're looking for virtual and remote work, does this mean if you got the exact kind of job you wanted and they wanted you to come into an office environment that you would not accept the job? Have you made that decision? That you'll only work virtual or remote?
I can't hear you.
Can you hear me okay?
Okay, yeah, I hear you now. I think it's coming in at a delay.
Okay, sorry about that.
No,
Yeah, that is correct at this time.
Okay, if you've made that decision that you won't go into an office, then I would put down that you're looking for virtual or remote positions, if you've definitely made that decision.
Okay.
Because you're wasting your time otherwise.
Right.
And I think also that really plays a part in the jobs that you're applying for. So the jobs that you're applying for, most of them will let you know if you're applying for a remote position or a work from home position, or they'll let you know how much entails in office or travel, what that percentage looks like as well.
Correct. And so I didn't know if I needed to actually indicate that on my resume for now, or do a separate resume, or just leave it as is.
Well, if in fact you have made that decision, if you go in for a job that has to be on site and they like you and want to hire you, and then you say, you know, I'm only looking for a remote position. Well, you know, you've just wasted a lot of time. You've scheduled, you've gone in, and it really is just a waste for the both of you. So I would indicate, since you made that position, make that decision, that you're looking for virtual work.
Okay. And so actually note that in the summary statement?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Now we had another question.
Yes, in the chat.
Okay. How far you go back? I would not go back beyond 15 years. A lot of people suggest that you only go back 10 years, but I definitely wouldn't go back beyond 15 years. You need to have some experience that's relevant to your current position. So relevant to the position that you are seeking. And a hiring manager is going to want to look for some experience that you've had in the last 2 to 3 years or 5 years. Experience that you've had 15 or 20 years ago, they're going to look at that as outdated, that the technology was different. So that's going to be a minus for you. So I would focus on that experience that is as close to this time frame as possible. Definitely would not go back beyond 15 years. On your second part of your question, if you've had college and you're in a certain age, must we mention that high school was completed? No. If you completed college, the assumption is that you had to go to high school somewhere or get a GED somewhere, because that is the requirement to enter college. So if you've completed college, have a degree in college, you don't even have to mention high school at all. That's my thought on it. Ms. Anderson, would you agree with that, or would you want to add something to that?
No, I agree with that completely. Outside of what I made mention of, if you notice maybe that if you went to the same high school as one of the hiring directors or something, like I said, it may be good to list as a talking point. So that way it can make yourself more relatable in getting the interview. But aside from there, there's, like she said, it's already kind of understood that you've completed high school if you've gone to college.
Okay. All right. Does that answer your question, Felicia? All righty. I want to just go back to one area really quickly before we go into how you update your resume if you are laid off. And that is in terms of the duties that you list on your resume. We've talked about the duties. We've talked about being as specific as possible. We've talked about quantifying them. I just wanted to give you something of an example. Something that someone might put down is, I help the sales team in their work. That's a one-liner. I help the sales team in their work. That's really kind of general. Something that would be more hard-hitting, that would gain more attention, would be something like, supported 9-person team to deliver 10.4% sales growth over the previous year and earned company-wide recognition award for performance. So you've gotten rid of the I, you put in an action word, supported 9-person team to deliver 10.4% sales growth. You've quantified it. Supported 9-person team to deliver 10.4% sales growth over the previous year and earned company-wide recognition award for performance. Again, you've gotten in a testimonial there. The company is testifying that you earned a company-wide recognition. This says you supported a 9-person team. Y'all delivered 10.4%. So you've taken a line that was very general. I help the sales team in their work. Well, when you say I help the sales team in your work, that doesn't really give specific information. That doesn't really portray how valuable that you were. But when you said you supported a 9-person team to deliver 10.4% sales growth, that gives you some very specific information that the hiring manager can look for. And it helps validate that you've been a profitable member of the team. And the company has validated that by giving you a company-wide recognition. So you've gotten specifics, you've got quantifiable data, you've used a wonderful action word, and you've gotten a testimonial all in one job duty. So you want to focus on writing job duties that are power-packed with that kind of information. So rather than just saying something that's kind of mealy-mouthed, I help the sales team in their work, let's pump it up. Let's support it, 9-person team to deliver 10.4% sales growth. Pump it up as much as possible so that you can set yourself apart from those other applicants. All right, let's deal with how to update your resume if you are a laid off worker. There are some things that I want you to think about. I want you to consider making sure that you show your job ending date and indicating that you are no longer employed if in fact you were laid off. Your job descriptions for your job should be written in the past tense. Showcase your achievements and pay Showcase your achievements and also any major initiatives that you were involved in your last role. So anything that you were doing before you left your position, be sure and get it on your resume. And always remember that your resume is a sales tool. It's a selling tool. It is your silent salesperson for you. It speaks for you, and it can take you to the center stage. On your resume, don't put anything on there that is negative. Do not put any negative feelings on there about your former employee, your former employer, to undermine your ability to put your best foot forward. So make sure that that's not something that you include on your resume, because that will really allow the hiring manager to know that this is not the kind of person that we want on our team. All right. One more slide, Ms. Anderson.
Okay.
We missed one. There was a slide relevant to furloughed employees. It should be right before this one. That one. Okay. So if you are furloughed, again, you want to write your job descriptions in the present tense, as if it's because you're still at the company. You're still on the payroll for the company. You're just furloughed. You are away for a time. You're not the same as a laid off worker. So make sure that the ending date reads present, because you still are with that organization. You want to highlight your responsibilities and accomplishments as if you're in a current job. Indicate projects that you were working on just before the furlough. And there are different thoughts. People think differently about whether or not you need to indicate that you actually are furloughed, but you want to write your resume as if you are still working there at the company. Okay. So Ms. Anderson, we can go to our last slide on tips for all. Now, again, we've talked about this since the very first slide. So no matter what your status is, these are things that everybody wants to remember. Your resume should be ATS friendly. And ATS is the applicant tracking system. That is that computer software that we've talked about. Your resume has to be friendly for that system. So it has to be concise. It has to be simple. It has to use, you have to keep that formatting style simple, leave off any creative flourishes, leave off the fonts that are cursive in nature. Use something that is very simple. Again, you want to use the same language, the same words and phrases that are commonly used in the job you are seeking. Again, read multiple job postings to find out what that language is. Do some research. Do some research on the company where you're trying to go. Research other jobs that are in that industry. Immerse yourself in the language, in the duties, in the responsibilities, so that you can make your resume match that. You can also take your resume and run it through jobscan.com and see how you score. If your score is low, you might want to reconsider rewriting your resume to get your resume up. And sometimes you may have to do this more than once because you want to get that score up. And in summary, this resume should always focus on what makes you a great employee. And how you do that is to make sure that you show in there that you can help your employer in terms of being more productive, being more profitable, and also that you are a safe worker. So your achievements and skills and your professionalism are the reasons that your next employer will hire you. And this is also what will set you apart and what will get you that interview. Okay, this ends our slides, but we want to see if there are any additional questions that any of you might have.
Yes, there is a question from Ms. T-Mobile. She has been
Uh-huh.
out of work for about 15 years, been taking care of her elderly parents, and want to know if you have any suggestions. Can you give us a little information about your work history or what you're interested in, Ms. T-Mobile?
I worked for Federal Express for 20 years, and I had to leave to take care of my parents. I started off as a customer service agent. I worked in dispatch, on-road manager, and that's pretty much my background.
Okay. So you have a 15-year gap. As we talked about gaps before, employers want to know what you've been doing in that gap. But you have something that is easily put on your resume, that you were that you had a family situation, that you were caring for elderly parents, and so you were away taking care of a family situation. So and literally, I mean, you could put a job title down there, caregiver. Because you were a caregiver for the past 15 years. Now, when you get to the interview, if they ask you about that position, you can go into that position as if you were talking about anything else. I cared for my parents. You can talk about the duties that you had to have in terms of taking them to their doctor appointments, in terms of the care that you had to provide for them at home, whether you were the meal provider as well, how you had to complete records and forms for different agencies and organizations. So there are a number of duties that are associated with being a caregiver. Now, again, usually we don't like to put down experience that goes beyond 15 years, but because you were in this particular role, I think that in this situation, I would highlight the time I was with, was it Federal Express, and some of the duties that I had at Federal Express. But I would literally put down caregiver for the amount of time, and then list separately the duties and responsibilities that you had as caregiver.
Okay, thank you.
Miss Anderson, did you want to add anything to that?
I think you pretty much hit it on the nose with that. Aside maybe if you participated, let's say if you work at a church, if you had any specific, if you were assigned to any specific task or duties, maybe at the church or any other organization that maybe you volunteered at a lot. I like Ruth was saying earlier, I would definitely in your situation highlight those volunteer opportunities. If you're noticing that you're still not getting, let's say that you're looking to actually apply for an industry outside of the experience that you have or outside of being a caregiver, then I would say you should definitely start looking into some other volunteer opportunities at some of the organizations or similar organizations that you want to work at. So that way you can start to build your resume and build your portfolio and start creating some networking opportunities. So let's say if you want to, I don't know, if you want to, I'm just going to say if you want to work at a nonprofit, then the best thing that you could probably do is seek out the nonprofits that you're looking to work at. See if they have any volunteer opportunities where you can come in, maybe teach a class or, work the front desk or something like that. Because if that's the case, then you'll be able to list that type of information, especially if you do that twice a week or something like that. You could list that on your actual resume. And it's also a great way to let the organization itself know that you're looking for something. So when the position does become available, you'll be more than likely the next best candidate for that position. Or they'll be able to tell other people like, hey, she's doing this and she does an amazing job and she's working for free. Just imagine how good she'll be if you actually start paying her. So those are definitely some things that I would suggest looking at as well.
Thank you. Any other questions?
All right, I guess the last thing I can bring up that resume, Ruth, so we can just take a look at a resume real quick and then just kind of pinpoint some different things that we would suggest could use some tweaking.
Okay.
So hold on here, let me pull up the demo resume here. And then while I'm pulling this up, For those that did send over a resume, I tried to send those over to you. You should have received those. If you had any specific questions, you can bring those now, or if you wanted to speak with myself or Ruth personally afterwards, just kind of let us know, and then that way we can I can assign us to some breakout rooms. If you want to add, if you don't, if you're not comfortable enough with sharing it with the group, but if you are, then please go ahead and bring those specific questions now, because I know a lot of my notes are on there. I was writing kind of fast and stuff, so they may not be the most legible. So if you have any questions on just what did I say, this is a great time to ask that. But this here is the demo. I changed it out to my name and changed a little bit of the information to kind of censor it. But Ms. Ruth, what are some different things, I guess, that you would like to highlight here and you would suggest on changing?
Well, one of the things that we would highlight and we would suggest that you would consider changing is to put your skills at a different location in the resume.
Sorry, y'all.
Yeah, we want to put our skills at a different location. Again, it would be, we think that based on our research, we have found that starting off your resume with that job summary is much better. Remember, we talked about the executive who'd worked for 18 years, just using 1 or 2 lines to encapsulate your job summary and putting that at the top of the resume before you go for your experience, but putting your skills down lower in the resume. One of the things that I read last night says that a lot of hiring managers, they want to be able to assess your skills themselves. People spend a lot of time and take up a lot of space on a page, and they want to be able to assess that. They don't want you to tell them what that is. They want to be able to assess that. So we suggest that you consider always putting your skills lower in the resume. That's a major thing. And looking at just here at the punctuation, educated customers regarding products, prices, and policies. You see, there's no punctuation at the end. But then we come into conflict resolution and we see a period at the end. And then we see mentor new employees and we see periods. Remember, whatever punctuation or whatever strategy you're using, if you're using ending punctuation, do that consistently, but be consistent on your punctuation. What's really good about this one is that we see a lot of action words that this person delivered, this person maintained, this person educated, met and exceeded. These are excellent action words. And so these are some excellent things that we like to see in a resume. They speak highly to what the employee has been able to accomplish in previous positions. Ms. Anderson, may I see the bottom of this? Okay, on this one, we see some activities, and on the activities, my question would be, what is the relevance of these activities to the position that the person is trying to get? If these activities are very relevant to that next position, we would say, yes, keep them on here. But if they're not relevant to the next position, this is just something that we have been involved in, then we would say, this doesn't help your position. And these activities have now pushed the resume to a 2-pager instead of a 1-pager. So we really would want to make sure that these activities would have some duties, responsibilities, something that would be very positive toward the next position if we're going to add them and make our resume go to a 2-page resume. So those would be,
I'm sorry. I just want to mention right here, so this is the education piece. So like they said, they went to State University, so we could definitely omit that. And that may make more space for the activities. And then as well as here, I would say what program it was. So what was it that you graduate in? Was it, did you get your Bachelor of Arts or Bachelor, I think BS is political science or whatever. And if you've been out of school quite some time, they say don't mention GPA. If your GPA was over a 3.5 though, it is sometimes nice to mention, but it's not necessary. Anything under 3.5 though, rule of thumb is just don't mention. And typically you change the fonts with this. I forget the rules off the top of my head, but you'll separate this normally like with some commas, and you will like, I think normally you'll italicize this if I said that correctly, or something like that.
Well, it is my sincere desire that we have presented some information this morning that has been helpful to you. Since we were filming this, we did go over some things that were not specifically relevant to those of you who are in our session, but we wanted to cover just some general things that might be helpful to folks who are currently in the job market, whether you're furloughed or whether you have been laid off or whether you're out of work. And we just wanted to go through the basic information that you want to consider when putting your resume together. And remember that your resume can help you get that interview if you think of your resume as your salesperson, your representative that goes before you. And what you want to do with your resume is to catch the attention, just like any ad that you see. Pretend you're a Coca-Cola ad, pretend you're a McDonald's ad. You got to catch people's attention, all right? Because you are selling yourself via your resume. And these tips will help you sell yourself, get the interview, and land that job so I can borrow some money from you. Okay.
And I'm going to stop the recording now, but I'm not going to end the video. So this way, if you all do have any specific questions to your exact resume or to any of the notes that you were given on your resumes, please feel free to ask those now. Or go inside the chat and say, hey, Jasmine, can you create me a breakout room? And then I can assign you someone to that breakout room to assist. But this way on the recording, because we do put our recording on both Facebook and YouTube, so that way no one will have personal information about you in case you wanted to share your screen and pull it up with us. And Audrey, it looks like you have a pause feature. Just for the
it says Miss T-Mobile raised hand.